Welcome to the Don't Die Rusty podcast. I'm Rick Hanson, and we will be talking about living, not dying. We're all on this adventure together, and we will be interviewing people who inspire us to live our best lives. People with various backgrounds who will walk us down the trails they took to not die rusty. Adventure in life are many things to many people. It could be a sprint or an endurance race, but with each adventure, we become a better version of us. We hope you keep chasing those dreams, being the best you, and of course, don't die rusty. Well, hello, Don't Die Rusty Nation. It has been an interesting drive. I left last night, stopped and stayed with my dad in Rehites, and then I kept driving to Sioux Falls for an adventurous day and hopefully I don't say hopefully, it will be a great conversation. I am here with Thomas Schofield, and it's funny because you'll hear the episode coming out this week actually with Kurt, and Kurt hooked me up with Thomas, and he said Thomas has some stories to tell you. And then you and I talked on the phone, and I'm going, holy smokes, you do have some stories to tell. And this is going to be a fun and interesting conversation, and actually energetic and entertaining and whatever else other adjective you want to use, because after talking to you, I got off and I talked to my wife and said I can't wait to get to Sioux Falls. So tell us a little bit about you, Thomas, and then we'll have a chat.
Tell you about me. What I currently am a stay-at-home dad and part-time, I guess you'd call me a real estate speculator at this point. Keep coming up with crazy projects and trying to figure out how to make money with them. For some reason, I just love to build things. I have no idea why. Just love swinging a hammer, and I like to know how things work. So, and stay-at-home dad, 2 young ones. I've got a 7 and a soon-to-be 4-year-old, within days, as a matter of fact, and a junior in college down in. He's a corn husker at Lincoln, Nebraska. So as soon as you and I finish, I'm hopping in the car to go down for his fraternity parents weekend. So,
well, that's fun. No, it sounds fun.
Yeah, well, he's an ATO in Lincoln, and I was an ATO here at USD in Vermilion. So, and my father was an ATO before me, so he's 3rd generation legacy. So it's always fun to get down and see the guys, because they all try to call me Mr. Scofield, and it's like, no, I'm a fraternity brother. Get rid of that Mr. crap. What else? I mean,
it would really got me. And then, like I said, I was on my way down here, and I was trying to think of what direction do I want to go. And I was listening to Ed Milet, and he said, life is about moments. And when we talked earlier, just to catch up, get to know each other a little bit, and we talked about South Dakota honest, which that stuck with me, because I think I truly thought, I believe in that, actually, because we all come from little towns. I mean, you graduated from Pierre, right?
Yeah.
But Pierre isn't, I mean, Rehites is little. That's 70 people. But if you do something in any of these little towns, South Dakota has grown, but everybody knows what you do. If you screw somebody up or do something, they know it, and you get a reputation. And there's 2 things in life that you can't buy, and that's reputation and character. And people in South Dakota, if you don't have either, you're going to lose it. I mean, you can rebuild stuff, but you can't buy it.
No, I would agree 100%. And unless you have stepped outside of those circles for a while, it's not as easily identifiable. Which is to say, the same kind of mentality or cultural base doesn't apply in Los Angeles. It doesn't apply in New York. It doesn't apply in Miami. So it becomes much more identifiable after you've gone out and been in those environments for a while. And it really makes you realize and appreciate, and sometimes not so much appreciate, the South Dakota honest and the principles that we're kind of brought up on as a whole. because they don't apply everywhere else.
No, and it's like, get it done. I think there's a little more trust. Get it done. I grew up on a ranch in Byrie Heights, and it was like I was always going to be the. That doesn't wouldn't have mattered if I was going to be 70 years old. I would have still been the young kid if the older guys were still working.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to go back to college, in which I did. Went back to BH and got a American Indian Studies history degree, and I work in a lumber yard right at the moment. I've been there for in the industry for now 25 years, just about. But it's interesting because then I decided I was going to chase my dreams, and it's fun. Where I want to go with this is, you started. You told me you traveled around, but you graduated from Pierre.
Mm-hmm. Barely.
Well, if I didn't have sports, I would have probably been not even graduating. We'll just say that.
The class of 1988 TF Riggs in Pierre was 215 people. I graduated 214th and have yet to figure out to this day who was dumber than I was.
But you know what's funny? I mean, you told I went to college, and I'm not trying to take away from the conversation, but I went to college, thought I was going to play football, chase girls, party, and I thought you got grades, and then they decided what you're going to do with your life, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I did party very well, and I chased girls mediocre, and got kicked out of school very well.
Well, I can relate with just about everything you just said. Went to USD on probation to begin with. I'm not even sure why they accepted me. I must have been a have to sort of thing, some sort of quota they had to meet. But got kicked out of there. Ultimately 4 times by the time I decided or realized that book learning just wasn't my thing.
Yep.
I'd love to sit down with a good book, but if it doesn't interest me, you just soon find me probably chewing on it than reading it, because if it doesn't grab my attention right off the bat, I can't focus like that. I think it's massive ADHD, but that's only non-diagnosis family lineage stuff. The assessment anyway.
And that's where I think I probably said to you, I did go back to college it would have been just about 10 years later, and I graduated, but it's funny, the classes that you have no interest in, you don't do well in.
Mm-hmm.
But the classes I was interested in, I did well in. Like you just said, I love reading. And we were talking earlier, but when I was setting up this, I love Hemingway. I love reading, but if you're not interested in it, it's like, it's just monotonous garbage to me. You know what I mean? If you're not interested in it. And I had to beg to get through college algebra, but I got through, but luckily. But it's about chasing your dreams, and it's funny how you tell us about you. You became
Do you need the whole synopsis of kind of?
Well, but you were a double for Patrick Swayze.
Mm-hmm. Body double.
Body double.
Started off as a stand-in, and the night I got to set, got promoted to body double. It was a movie that was being filmed in Lincoln, Nebraska, and just by luck and coincidence, I was in Omaha, Nebraska, redoing a bathroom for my aunt. Because it was shortly before then, I realized that I was in college, and just realized that, look, this isn't the way you learn. This isn't doing you a lot of good other than socially. And so I just left school kind of with no idea what I was going to do. My aunt said, why don't you come down and finish my bathroom? And while I was doing it, I was listening to the radio during the day, and they mentioned that they were holding open auditions. And I thought, well, that sounds kind of like fun. It was a girl I knew in college that acted, and I always thought that there was something that interested me about it. I didn't know what it was. So I heard about this movie audition, and I went, and there was like 6,000 people auditioning, and I didn't even really know what I was auditioning for. They just handed me a script and sat down and had me read the lines, and I thought, okay, well, that was fun. I stood all day and left thinking, well, at least now I know what a movie audition is like. And like 30 days later, they called me and said, we need you on set tomorrow night. I was like, oh, okay. I had left my aunt's, and I think I was visiting a friend in Aberdeen when I got the call. And what they said is, we have one of two parts for you. We either have this part, it's a non-speaking extra role, and here's all the benefits of that and everything. Or we've got a stand-in position, which, you don't really show up on camera, but it's long-term and terrible pay. And I was like, okay, let's abuse myself. And I chose the stand-in position, and got all of the information, showed up on set that night. It was a night shoot, and within 30 minutes of being there, they had brought in body doubles, professional body doubles from LA, and the body double that was originally supposed to be Patrick's was too big for these outfits, and these were like $10,000 and $12,000 designer outfits that they weren't about to change. So the producer, a guy by the name of G. Mac Brown, who, now that I've said his name out loud, you'll see it in all sorts of movies here and there, during the credits or during the four credits. And pardon me, he came over to me and said, hey, do you go to wardrobe and put this on. So I took this thing into wardrobe, put it on, came back, and he's like, okay, do you have any problem doing stunt work or being on camera? And it was like, I'm former military, so I had some experience in doing high risk stuff, rappelling out of helicopters in the jungle kind of thing. And I was like, no, and I'm good. And he's like, all right, congratulations, you're a new body double, and sent me into makeup. And within, I stepped into makeup, and I am sitting just boom next to Patrick Swayze, Wesley Snipes, John Leguizamo, Chris Penn, Arliss Howard, Blythe Danner, all these names that, that I grew up watching on film, and they're talking to me like, I'm a seasoned actor and I have no clue. I still got hayseed in my hair, And so, they introduced me to Patrick that evening, and it was funny because we were doing a hand shot, like on a steering wheel. Uh-huh. So I walk in, and the makeup artist who they brought in, you've seen him on film before, his name's Roy Helland, introduces me to Patrick as, hey, Patrick, this is Thomas. He's your hand job for the evening. And I was like, what? So I figured it out, and he immediately, goes into, all right, here's, what I've been doing, and here's how I've been doing it, so you can copy it. And it was like, okay, cool. And just like that, 30 minutes later, I'm in front of a camera and doing this stuff, and I just fell in love with the acting lifestyle. The actual craft took a lot longer to kind of come to love, but I always say that I fell in love with the acting lifestyle at that point, because they've got drivers coming in to get them and take them and put them in the cars just to drive them down the road to set, and, they got assistants handing them stuff and taking phone calls for them, and it was like, oh, that's so cool. Yeah. And I was only 23 or 24 at the time, so I had experienced a little bit of the world, but nothing like that. It was just all of the movies you watch as a kid, because I was a Swayze fan growing up. I was a hockey player, so Youngblood was huge, and then Red Dawn, Dirty Dancing. I don't really get the Dirty Dancing thing at first, but came to appreciate it a few years later, and then Roadhouse and all that stuff. So this action hero who I got to spend 4 hours a day in makeup with, asking questions and bothering, and I'm sure more than bothering at that point, because As you can tell, I like to talk.
We're in the same boat there.
And ask questions. And so, yeah, that was the indoctrination into the film world.
Well, yeah, because, I love Red Dawn. And like the Dirty Dancing one, like you said, I've learned to appreciate it. But, the Patrick Swayze movies at the time, like you said, Roadhouse, those things, that was amazing. The 80s were amazing films.
Yeah.
They were. 80s, early 90s were amazing films. So that's very cool. And then you kept on moving forward with your acting?
Got bit by that acting bug. By the end of the film, there was a, the movie was called Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar.
Uh-huh.
Big long title.
Yep, I know that movie.
So you've seen more of me than you know. Just about every, and one of the reasons they needed a body double is because Patrick was pretty beat up at that point in his career. He was a ballet dancer for the better part of his, youth and young Hollywood years, and then he was also a really avid horseman. He had, back then they were $1 million+ Arabians that he talked about. So he was a rider, and he had beaten his body up pretty good. So lots of scars from surgeries, all that stuff. And I guess I was young and fresh, not that many scars yet. And so that was one of the reasons that they needed me. So this film was being filmed in Nebraska, and it was about 3 drag queens that drove across country, and ended up stranded in this kind of backwoods community. We filmed in a place called Loma, Nebraska, which when we weren't there was population, I want to say 17 is what I recall them saying. And when film crew was on set, the population was like 270.
But it's funny because I've seen Tu Wong Fu, and it's a very interesting movie. There was one that was similar to Tu Wong Fu. Like I told you before that I lived in Australia, and there's one that they drove across Australia too.
Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Yep.
Because they were filming that simultaneously.
Oh, really?
Yes. So we were getting back channel communications from apparently, people that were on set down there. So there was this kind of competition. Because stories were going back and forth from set to set about what was going on film.
Oh, really?
That's where we went back to. The reason it took so long to film, they started calling it Apocalypse Fu, because the one thing they didn't accommodate for in the pre-production of this thing was the humidity in Nebraska at the end of summer. So you'd step out of makeup, this air-conditioned room, with perfect makeup on, and the humidity would hit you, and it would just immediately melt. So you had about 45 minutes to get a good take before you ended up back in makeup again. And of course, being in all of that, being a man, being transformed into what they want to appear to be a woman is a lot of makeup.
Oh, I believe that.
So we'd show up to set in the morning, and I'd spend 4 hours a day sitting next to Swayze, bothering the hell out of him, asking questions when I could. Got to know him a little bit.
Yeah, and that's why I'm here, because I like to learn too. So I like to ask questions, and those are the things those are, like I said earlier, those are the moments that can take you in directions that you never know what you might do.
Not a clue.
Because then after that movie's over, what do you do?
Well, like I said, I got bit by the bug, and I'd met so many people on set that got along with, had great stories with. Kenny Ortega, who is the guy who directed Hocus Pocus. He had just finished that. And I didn't even know what that was at the time. And then he went on to High School Musical. All 3 of those apparently he directed, and Glee did that. So he's kind of like the guy who made Zac Efron, took him from Disney to superstar. Got to be friends with him. good friend of mine, a guy by the name of withThomas, who was the first black production designer in history. Met him on set, and he kind of took me under his wing, and I'm sure I was just wandering around wide-eyed and gawking at things, and people noticed it, and again, I like to ask questions. Even I got to be friends with Wesley Snipes, who is his bodyguard and personal trainer all in one, a guy by the name of Steve Muhammad, who was best friends with Bruce Lee. He was 5 times international martial arts champion. So as soon as I found that out, you couldn't get me away from him. I was asking stories about, he and Bruce Lee traveled across the Japan and Far East dojos together studying. And the Bruce Lee was Chinese, and they were in Japanese dojos, and apparently there's some sort of rivalry about the martial arts and the harrowing instances that he told me they had just from being hated because of the different kinds of martial arts. And then, I got to ask him questions about Bruce Lee, movie the legend at that point.
Yeah.
And getting direct second-hand, actually first-hand to the experiences, but even asking him, like, do you know how Bruce Lee died? And he said, well, I think it was electricity. He used to train with electricity all the time, and ultimately he thinks that screwed up his heart, but nobody really knows, according to him. So that was the kind of cool thing that I was, enjoying about set the most. So met all these wonderful people, and was encouraged, like, acting could be for you. You should, give it a whirl. And my friend Wynn, who to this day we're still very, very good friends. I'm actually going to Los Angeles on the 14th of this next month. He's getting an Oscar during a special Oscar presentation. They call it the Academy's Governor's Awards, where him, Tom Cruise, Dolly Parton, and Debbie Allen are all getting honorary Oscars.
Very cool.
I get to go to an Oscar party and sit at his table. And the night before, we're going to Debbie Allen's dance studio for her Oscar party. So, have kept these friends for years and years and years. They said, if you're going to act, you need to either, go to New York or go to Los Angeles. And it was like, well, what about Chicago? That's kind of close to home. They're like, no, if you're going to do this, you got to go the distance. So I went to New York and stayed with Wynn for a week and just kind of explored, did some Broadway, productions, met a whole bunch of people. And then the following week, I just flew straight from New York to Los Angeles. And my brother had already moved to Los Angeles from California, or from South Dakota. So went and stayed with him for a week and met some more people and just kind of figured out, all right, if I'm going to do this, which place am I going to go? And for some reason, I was always terrified of moving to New York. I don't know why. I think it had something to do with a Michael J. Fox movie that I watched when I was a kid. He was like living in this slum while trying to climb a corporate ladder. But I was terrified of New York. So I chose Los Angeles.
My question is, when I think of New York, I think about Broadway. Mm-hmm. When I think of Los Angeles, I think about movies. Was that a choice? Was that part of it?
It probably had to some degree a bit of an effect on it, but that wasn't the majority of it. I went to Los Angeles and spent time at the beach and the sun, and I'm definitely more of a tropical person at the base layer than I am a city guy. And consequently, since unrelated, I have lived in New York. I went there and lived there for about 9 months, right in Manhattan, in the Chelsea district, and I loved it.
Really?
But it was just a little bit later in life than it should have been, because it would have been great in my 20s and 30s, but it wasn't. It was in my 40s, and it takes a lot of energy to live there. I mean, it's nonstop go. And at the time, I was in nonstop go mode, so it fit. But, New York is definitely for your 20s or 30s, and it's not a terrifying place to live either.
But I say, coming from South Dakota, I mean, for me personally, I would love to visit. I've never visited New York. I've been on the West. I've never been on the East Coast. But I just see, we talked about being on a, maybe we haven't, but I look at being on a boat. If I'm in the ocean, I think of Jaws,
Hmm.
being from South Dakota, but then I look at New York as Gotham, more or less, you know, dark and gloomy, and no, everybody is. There's people not in a good mood. It seems like to me, but that's the portrayal that you get from the outside with movies, with television, with other things. You know, the constant go, and I like coming out here today. We were just talking about that sunrise was amazing, and you don't get to see those.
Yep. That, the sun rising over buildings is much different than the sun rising over the plains. um, so I ended up in Los Angeles and hit the ground running. Um, uh, Ended up, well, when I first moved there, just to make sure that I was surviving and everything, I was working 120 hours a week. And even with the credentials of, hey, I just came off a film, you know, being Patrick Swayze's body double, that's not an automatic entrance. You know, you still got to go and do it. And I was auditioning probably twice a day and working at a legal consulting firm as a temp for a while, while also waiting tables. And then wherever I could, I got into the catering side of things.
Mm-hmm.
I would go and bartend at special events, everything from, uh, gosh, one of the early ones that really caught my attention is I was carrying tray, so I was a waiter, and it was at John Peters' house, who was married to Barbara Streisand for a long time and then became a director. And it was for Tom Bosley's stepdaughter's wedding. I mean, it's convoluted to explain it, but what it boiled down to is I was carrying trays through this, this high-end event, and I got Schwarzenegger and Maria Shriver at the time over here. I've got and Sandra Bullock was standing, and caught my attention because she was taller than I thought she was going to be. And I'm flirting with Angie Dickinson at the time, which, I mean, policewoman.
Exactly. There, I was going to go there too. Yeah.
And then Tom Bosley, the father from Happy Days,
Yep.
is just walking around being jolly and jovial to everybody. That was one of the first events that I did, and it was like, wow, this stuff really does exist, And even though I had already had an indoctrination into it existing, it was just different, It was almost fantasy land. But that began my I acted and modeled for somewhere around 7 or 8 years, I think. That was my main focus. So, working different jobs, waiting tables, bartending, and hitting auditions during the day. And I had some successes. Did a couple of episodes of Chicago Hope. Did a couple of independent films, had a 7-Up national commercial, ended up on stage for a full year in what is now, as original cast, what is now the second longest running off-Broadway production of all times. It's apparently still running, and it's back in New York, but we did take LA's Musical of the Year award for that one. What else? Lots of modeling gigs. I'd have to go back and look at my resume to remember it all.
Yeah.
I even did the voice of some Japanese anime.
Really?
Voiceover work, yeah. In this funny little series called Stratus 4, which is, I guess since anime has become such a thing that I apparently, I'll mention it to my friends' kids, and they're like, "Oh, you were in, Stratus 4."
Well, that's interesting because I've guys that I work with that like anime, and then my stepdaughter loves anime, and I don't know much about anime myself, but that's interesting.
Just Japanese cartoons that they dub over, as far as I know.
Yeah. So that's interesting.
That's what I got out of it.
So, but didn't you were doing that stuff and
So yeah, I did it, but the thing about acting is it's just the most unsure profession there is. You know, one month you are living on top of the world and you've got drivers taking you to, you know, your photo shoots, and the next month you're dead broke and it's like, oh, am I ever going to work again? So it's just a roller coaster of emotion, and you know, there's no retirement in it, you know, unless you've got your SAG stuff going, which I did, but again, wasn't working consistently enough to feel comfortable.
yeah.
And in Los Angeles, I had a girlfriend, which she moved from South Dakota out to LA with me. So we were a team and a pair from the get-go. And but as you well know in relationships, if you're the broke one, you know,
Yeah.
it tends to be uh, lopsided at that point.
Yeah.
So in between the acting gigs, I started doing more and more of the catering and bartendering, and it took me so many different places. Like so, where I really kind of made the transition over to production side of things for events was at the Scream 2 premiere, and it was at a place called the Hollywood Colonnade, which is where Jimmy Kimmel now films his show.
Mm-hmm.
But it's right on Sunset Boulevard, big, huge white columns in the front, cool building. And it was Scream 2, so it was a Miramax thing. And I showed up with the team of bartenders. I was in charge of the bartenders. The guy that was the production manager he had just kind of collapsed. For some reason, the pressure was too much for him, which, I mean, it's a high pressure gig, but I went up to him and I'm like, hey, buddy, you know, I've got the bartenders here, the team. We can't set up bars unless we have bars. And he just was kind of rocking back and forth in the corner kind of thing. So I was like, why don't you give me your walkie-talkie and your clipboard and let's see what we can't get done. So he handed it over, and I took this team of bartenders and just went around and jumped in on the decor side of things, got the bars put together, and then we got the bars set up, and they were so far behind the other teams that it was like, all right, guys, let's jump in, make sure this happens. And so we all teamed up and got the job done, and it was just kind of me that stepped in and said, let's, you know. Mm-hmm. So the guy that had produced the event was a guy by the name of Jeffrey Best. He was young and upcoming in Hollywood at the time, and he was kind of taking over all of Miramax's stuff. But he was becoming known as the up and coming event designer. He came over and said, "So you're the guy that just saved our butt?" And I was like, "Well, you know, I don't know what I did." He said, "Well, we were supposed to be open at 9:00. You got us open at 9:05. He's like, "Congratulations, you start next Monday." And that was on a Thursday night, because all movie premieres happen on Thursday nights, so that Friday for the weekend they can, you know, put out the press and then more people go to the movies. So I started with him and quickly went from, you know, just kind of production manager to event producer, to taking over more and more aspects of it. And the dynamic worked for me because it was very much, I have military background. I joined the National Guard when I was 19 because I flunked out of college my first year, and it was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm not going to make my parents pay for it. So joined the military for that. So I went through basic and AIT at age 19 and was pretty good at it. I was a pretty good soldier. So it was the same dynamic as the military when you're deploying that you used for these events. You know, you rally your troops and you know, give them all the information and give them your objective, and then you get it done. And it just kind of worked for me. So within a year, I was, you know, production managing and more or less producing a lot of Miramax stuff. And all said and done, career total, it's like 640 events or something like that. Because I kept all the lanyards, you know, your passes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
they're hanging out in the garage now in the I used to be cool pile.
Well, it's funny. I've been to some trade shows and stuff, and I thought I got lucky to be here, so I keep my lanyards too. So
It wasn't conscious at first, but after about 50 or 60 of them, that's when it was like, all right, I'm going to keep these.
But that's kind of cool to go back in memories to. In someday, maybe your kids will want to look at them.
Oh yeah, and when anytime I go through that, it's like, oh yeah, there was that event, and it's not just, that one event isn't just a 4-hour period for me. It's a week and a half, if not a month of planning and execution, and all the fiascos that can go with it. I mean, everything from one event, this producer who was also with our company ordered a ton of tents, and it was for the Independent Film Awards or something like that. It was on Santa Monica Beach, and the tents that he ordered hadn't been fireproofed. Well, one of the things you have to do is give the LA fire marshals, in your application, proof of fireproofing or what you've done to slow the burn rate down, and he hadn't done a thing. So had to search all over for this particular kind of flame retardant that wouldn't leave marks or dye the material, charter a private flight for it to get from Texas to Los Angeles, and then apply it in the middle of the night so we could, make sure our event happened the next day.
Oh my gosh.
It definitely sounds traumatic, but there's one of those for every single event I've ever done. Something that some unforeseen circumstance. There's always something, and it just matters. It just depends on how big and how, complex and how affecting it is how much attention it gets. But yeah, I've got hundreds of those stories.
Yeah, I bet you do.
Yeah, just the trillions of things that can go wrong.
Is it mostly like the tents or food or?
Oh, I was involved the Star Trek premiere, the company that I worked for, the newest Star Trek. Yeah. So it was 10, 15 years ago. Well, probably 15 now. Somebody had booked the caterer for the wrong evening.
No.
Yep. Oh. So everybody showed up and they were doing their thing. And middle of it, one of the guys is like, "Hey, where are the caterers?" And I just showed up as management for the day, so I wasn't involved in the planning. And it's like, call the caterer. Where are they? And this is like 2 p.m, and these things usually start about 9 at night. Well, that was one of the bigger fiascos, but got it done.
See, that's amazing to me. For 7 hours to do. I mean, if you went to the 9 o'clock start, to get food done for a premiere for that kind of stuff is amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing that it got done, but you get real inventive and figure out how to overcome stuff, no matter how basic it is. Whether I just literally stuffed handfuls of cash into my assistant's pocket, like, go to the liquor store, buy us cases and cases of this and this and this, and get back here. And meanwhile, we're ordering different kinds of food with a makeshift caterer to come in and make it look, but we got it done. And at the end of the day, your job is to make sure that nobody notices the difference.
So that has to be time consuming and amazing to do all these events.
Well, yeah. I mean, there are years, there are whole periods of my life that are just a blur from that time frame. And then you still try and carry on a normal life outside of work, and it's almost impossible. It definitely takes a toll on you. And the last list that I saw, like when I first started, production or event producer wasn't even really a title, and it wasn't something that you could study to be or anything. And now, 20 some years later, almost 30, it is a course that they teach in college. I mean, there are actual degrees for it. So, and I've done a couple of online lectures for classes just to happen to hear, what I used to do. And before it was an accredited position
Yeah.
back in the wild, wild west days of it. Yeah, and we weren't back in those days, for that time, we weren't adhering to OSHA rules. We weren't, it's like, oh, we've got to get this weird prop hung up in the middle of the top of a tent. Let's see what kind of rinky-dink system we can get up there with. Yeah, hanging off the side of a 20-foot lift, no safety harness, that kind of thing, just to get the job done. And that is not a made-up scenario.
Well, I believe that.
And that's how I the name of my company ultimately is after the years went by and I worked for all the different event producers in Hollywood. I was with Jeffrey for 6 or 7 years, and I had 2 consecutive injuries that kind of put an end to my working with him. One, and they were both on the job work. Both on the job injuries. Was driving my crew around and noticed that there was a leak under my car. So I got back to our warehouse and I popped the hood open and the radiator hose exploded across my abdomen and instantly took all of the skin off of the right side of my abdomen. So it was a 6-week heal process for that. And the second one was a little more profound. It was Oscar Week 03, and we had 11 events in 7 days. So I was driving around I took my production managers, and we were going from site to site to site to show them all the, things they needed to know, and pure communication, because, 2 events, if not 3 on some of those days, there's plenty to go wrong. So we wanted to know that, make sure that everybody knew each other's job, which is, again, a very military kind of tactic. And on my way back to the warehouse with my production managers, we're driving through downtown LA on the 101, and it's just starting to become Friday night rush hour traffic. We get rear-ended by a guy who he didn't even think about the word brakes before he hit us. And I was twisted sideways, and he slammed into the back of us, and I took a ride in an ambulance down to the downtown LA hospital to sit in the hallway for 4 hours before they could actually get me into the ER. And that put me on my back for about a little over 3 months for sure. So that's when I left Best and went freelance to all the other people in LA. From the big names back then were Colin Cowie, Mindy Weiss, Tony Schubert, a lot of stuff with Event 11. One of the guys who was my very first protege, he had started a company and it became known as the Visionary Group back then. So I was working with all the big names in the event world in LA, just to make it after, or at least that's just, I guess, the way kind of my career went after being employed by one company for so long. I just went freelance and, consulted and got to do even bigger events at that point. So, and through that whole ordeal is my girl from South Dakota. We were together at the time, and we actually purchased a couple of houses on the beach in Huntington Beach, California, a couple blocks off the beach, and we're remodeling them at the time. So thank goodness I had a comfortable place to relax, and heal from this massive injury. And one morning I rolled over, just don't know what it was. I was living the Hollywood dream and kind of working in the industry that I wanted to be in, or found out that I wanted to be in, and just woke up one day and it was like, we need to get married, have a baby, and move home to South Dakota. And she looked at me like I had grown another head. Like, what is wrong with you? Because I was a guy who was never going to have kids, was just going to keep living that professional partier lifestyle. And a couple of days later, she's like, okay, let's get married and, have a baby and move back to South Dakota. Because at that point, I had enough of a reputation and enough of a network so that I could live in South Dakota and travel off to do the other events. So we immediately began, went to the doctor, like, how do we get healthy enough to, make sure the baby's good and
Mm-hmm.
started the process at that point.
Mm-hmm.
That takes us to about 03-ish. Yeah, there's just like I said, there's so many stories and so
Well,
much that.
well, it really doesn't boggle me in my mind. It makes me proud more that we take off from the world and then we experience it and say South Dakota is where I need to raise my kids.
You know,
And that should make everybody proud that lives in South Dakota, uh, because this is a great place to raise your kids, and for multiple reasons. And because I think that I always had this, I would say maybe I wouldn't go so much, maybe a chip on my shoulder is like, I read a lot of books. Don't look at me as a hick kind of thing, but in those things, because I was thinking we're just as educated. We just don't have the city, the big city, the New York, the Los Angeles, the Miami stuff. But we have a good place to raise kids that can be free.
well, it's funny that you put it that way because, and it's an ongoing joke still to this day. There's what 850,000 people in South Dakota right now,
Something like that.
and I think when I moved to LA, there was maybe 800,000. So when you think about the population of Los Angeles alone being, 14 million with LA County and surrounding, it gives you a slightly different perspective, of course, than when you were growing up. And so inevitably, the first thing out of anybody's mouth that you meet is, oh, I've never met anybody from South Dakota before. Almost every single time when you tell them you're from South Dakota. People, of course, what's South Dakota like?
Yep.
Well, for the longest time, just used to like to play with them. They'd ask dumb questions like, "Oh, do South Dakota have running water? Or you got to go out to the well?" And it's like, shut up. But I would jack with them. Oh yeah, you want to cross South Dakota? You better saddle a fast horse. But yeah, eventually it would come up talking about growing up. We used to have keg parties at one of the monuments right outside a pier that was supposedly the dead center of the North American continent. So I would always share that part of the story with people, like to give them an idea, perspective of where South Dakota is, because inevitably, as soon as you tell somebody you're from South Dakota, they're like, "And what part of North Dakota are you from?" And it's like, South Dakota. Is that the one with the faces or the Peace Guards? But I describe it as, growing up in Pierre, there is this insulation around you. And back then, my form of news was a 12-inch by 12-inch black and white box, that piped in the rest of the world. The little TV that was in my bedroom. That's where you got the movies, and that's where you got the MTV news, of all the cool things going on in the world. So that's the perspective that you get. But it's also dead center of the continent. So anything cool comes from each coast and then kind of meets in the middle. So we were kind of the last to get, back in those days, last to get those cultural tidbits. So there is a certain insulation, and there's, so many positives for it. And there's a few drawbacks, just from, like you said, that there are certain cultural things that you're not exposed to as readily as you would be on one of the coasts or, one of the major cities. It just has an insulation kind of effect, and good and bad to it. More good than anything. Like you said, that the in the very beginning, the South Dakota honesty, which definitely, the work ethic and integrity served me well in that environment, because everybody hears the stories about LA, the plastic, and there's a lot of it that's true, but people notice, and they notice that you can be trusted with whether it's the product that their company produces or their equipment that you use. You develop that trust, and that grows, and it's more rare there. So it definitely was a benefit to advancing the career. Well, in Los Angeles for sure.
Yeah, because I think I've been places and they can, when they see who you are, know where you came from, and they can trust that it will get done.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to worry that you're so much trying to pull the wool over their eyes, but you will get it done.
That is, I guess this is going back to the statement we started with. After I went freelance, I started my company called The Hired Guns. Guns is with a Z.
Uh-huh.
And the name comes from there was the fire marshal in LA is like the ultimate power when it comes to the event world, because they can say shut it down and that's it. Millions and millions of dollars just lost if you're not doing things right. And there was a particularly rough fire marshal that we used to get all of the time on our sites, almost every time. Both of his parents were killed in fires, separate fires, not the same one.
Really?
So you can imagine how vigilant a fire marshal who's lost two parents to two different fires is. And it was at the first Latin Grammy Awards. I was production managing, and everything was done. We were ready to start the event, except somebody random and it was a huge event, like probably covered it was in the Century Hotel's parking lot, which the Century Hotel, if you don't know anything about LA, that's where Ronald Reagan used to stay and basically headquarter his team out of when he was in Los Angeles as president. So there was the Reagan suite up top. The entire top floor was the Reagan suite. And the parking lot's monstrous. So we took the parking lot. It's about the size of 2 football fields. And I mean, we carpeted it. We put up massive structures, bar structures and all sorts of cabanas. And, that was back in the day before cabanas were cool. And just turned it into this amazing event. And it was all being held up by some random person had parked a car, and it was partially in the fire lane. And was like, you're not starting until that car's gone. And we could not find the owner. So my solution was I looked over and I saw a huge reach forklift. And I was like, you guys go distract him to the other part of the event. We'll get rid of the car. So they're doing the walkthrough. And I just came up with the forklift, picked up the car as gently as I could, and took it a couple blocks away and put it in a parking space. And so I got back to the event site and was making full circle. And he's like, okay, the car's gone. So what'd you do with the car? I was like, it's gone. He's like, no, what'd you do with it? And I was like, it's gone. It doesn't matter. What did you do with the car? I was like, it's in a parking spot a couple blocks away. He said, you really are a cowboy. And I still didn't tell him what I had done. And so at that point, he just started calling me Guns. And so that's where the Hired Guns came from. But yeah, again, those trillions of things that can go wrong, and coming up with creative solutions that don't harm people or interfere with, other things going on. But yeah, that was how I got the name, but that's how my reputation kind of, I became known as the guy who would just come up with a solution, no matter what it was. And those were the Hollywood days. So,
yeah. So were most of your events in the California, or did you have, when you started freelancing, you move around to other cities?
At that time, most of those events were in California. We did some in Hawaii. We did a couple in Mexico. We, of course, do the Sundance Film Festival every year, so Park City. Every now and again, we'd get something out of town. I did a lot of stuff for Maxim back in those days, New York. Events for Maxim. We had some when we launched Tanqueray 10, the high-end Tanqueray product. We did a launch for that, and we did an event in LA, and then 4 days later did the exact same event in Miami. So there was some travel involved at that point, but not nearly as much as the end of the career. I shouldn't say end of the career, but the latter part of the career, which I guess in terms of kind of sharing the timeline and the stuff we'll have to wait until later to get to. But so at that point, deciding to move back to South Dakota kind of became the focal point. We almost immediately became pregnant. So by the time we actually got back to South Dakota, bought a house up at Lake Madison, and that was where the mother of my first son, she kind of grew up during the summertime, so that was near and dear to her. She moved back, and I finished working and building these two houses that we had started, just kind of finished it up. So I think I was either 30 or 60 days behind her, but it took a while to finish up. And packed and moved back to South Dakota and moved to Lake Madison, and was still flying back and forth to do a lot of the LA stuff at that time. I did do a couple of events, Super Bowl events. That's what, that year was Houston. I was doing the P. Diddy White parties. I got a last minute call to step in and do that year, which was that might have been 03, because it was in the Hamptons, and it was right before my son was born. Oh, no, so it would have been 04. The summer of 04, did a Puffy White party in the Hamptons. Shortly thereafter, I did the Hunter S. Thompson Memorial and came home, and she wanted to kill me. She wanted me dead because she was 8.5, 9 months pregnant, and I'm taking these last minute gigs. Like the P. Diddy party was hey, no, I can't do this one. And they literally just said, okay, name your price.
Really?
Yep. Whatever it takes to get you out here and do this. So I was like, all right, you get me at this price for this many days, and then I'm out. The fiasco after that is yours. And thank God, because we delivered not too long after that.
I bet that was stressful then too.
It took a toll. I forgot to mention the we were talking about earlier, and I meant to get to the statistic of event producer is like the 6th most stressful career choice you can make. As I understand it, the list, and I saw it, but and have seen lists since, but it starts off with number 1, astronaut, soldier, brain surgeon, cop, something else, event producer. So it's up there in terms of stress. And when you realize, like I said about the fire marshal, that you've got these events that have a non-negotiable timeline, millions of dollars going into them in both your internal and external budgets, where your internal is just all of the things that you're taking care of. Well, your PR company might have a multi-million-dollar launch budget for PR and marketing that they're spending simultaneously, and it all comes together in this one little spot that's this event that it's a non-negotiable timeline. So the stress that goes along with it. I've been through some harrowing situations.
I bet.
Maxim, I mentioned earlier, they were a client. We did an event it was a place called the the Farmer's Daughter Hotel, and it's right across from CBS Studios on Fairfax and Highland in Hollywood, or at least it was there. It's been so long since I've been out to LA, I don't know, but it's where like all the people who were contestants on The Price is Right would stay, but it was also known for hosting evening activities for some industrious ladies and men, I'm sure too. But we went in and we took this the space, like we took all of the rooms out. It was like part of it was almost like a Holiday Inn in one part, big pool area outdoor and indoor, and then a 3-story wall of rooms, with 4 balconies going up. Well, we cut off the parking lot. We took all the stuff in the rooms and we made it setups out in the parking lot that looked like they were the rooms. And then we gave every room a different theme. There was high school prom. There was a C-store where you could go in and grab a thing of Tic Tacs and a Slim Jim, and walk back out. And it was just all for the guests. There was Mini Kiss, the 4 midgets that dressed as Kiss. They were jumping up and down on the bed, lip syncing to Kiss. There was an S&M room where you walked in and there's a guy hanging whips and chains and padded the inside of the room. There was live internet tattoos. That was in the early days of live internet. But, it was an easy $1 million event. And we had, I think it was the Cult playing. It was either the Cult or Blue Oyster Cult. The word cult is coming up. But anyway, somebody on the station, KROQ, which is the big rock station in Los Angeles, somebody called in and said there's this Maxim event tonight at the Farmer's Daughters Hotel at this time, and it's free to the public. And they announced it on the radio. Well, it wasn't. It was a invite-only private event, and it started off badly because it's kind of close to a residential section, and of course the fire marshal was there, and the band is playing, and he's like, "Hey, you've got it up too loud." This is right after we opened doors, and they started cranking away, and he's like, "You've got it too loud. You got to turn it down." So I go and I talk to the front of house for the band, and I'm like, "Hey, fire marshal, says we're too loud. We got to bring it down." Well, I don't know if you've ever worked with one of those front of the house guys, but they are surly gents. So he's like, "Yeah, I'll turn it down." And I watch him with a smile turn the knob down, and I turn to walk away, and all of a sudden it's even louder than it started. And hey, no. And meanwhile, people just start showing up to the front door by the thousands. And so I'm getting radio calls, "Get the music down," and hey, we got 1,000 people out front that are, trying to get in. Nobody's on the list. And, it just turned into pure chaos. And that is a major intersection in the middle of, Beverly Hills / Hollywood. And the people started spilling out into the streets, and then the traffic was affected. And we had set up our production headquarters in this one room that overlooked the entire area. So you had a bird's eye view of everything. So as this is all going on, I'm convening my team in the room like, "Okay, guys, we got to get this under control." And meanwhile, I hear it come over the radio that they had to collapse the front door, which is the last thing you ever want to do at an event. And then I get pulling me aside. He's like, "Son, this is just, we're calling it. We're shutting you down." So thousands of people in the street that want into the event, and we've already allowed probably 1,000 people in, and they're going through all the rooms. Well, all of a sudden, news copters show up overhead, and a police copter shows up overhead, and shut it down. So it just a pure fiasco. My security team wasn't nearly big enough to handle this whole thing. And all of a sudden, here comes an LA police armored vehicle shows up, and it's got 60 riot cops in full gear jumping out of the back of it. So they took care of the front, and then they're like, "All right, clear the place." And so I had to walk with a team of fully riot geared LA cops to each one of the rooms and, knock on the door saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to inform you that we've been shut down by the fire marshal. So we need to exit the premise." Most of the time you'd get this, 20 people in this little room like, "Oh man." And they would slowly exit the room, and they can't really see the riot cops behind me. And one door, you walk up to, it's like, "Guys, we got to shut down, fire marshal. We're done." And they're like, "Screw you. We're not going anywhere." And I just step back and wave the cops. They came out in zip ties.
Holy moly.
So, and I'm running around during this whole thing, and I go back up to our production headquarters room, and I'm watching the TV, which has got a camera shot from directly above us of what I'm looking out the window at. A little harrowing. So
yeah, I bet so.
And by the time we wound down, thank God Maxim had a great PR team, because the next headline on the front of Maxim magazine that month was "LA not ready for New York's Maxim magazine."
There you go.
They spun it nicely.
Yeah, I bet they did. That would be an amazing, the radio putting that out and then having all these people would have just been amazing sight.
And there was just no forewarning whatsoever. We figured it out after the act, why it happened. And, funny things that I remember is I had this big, tall, oaky production manager named Sully that worked for me. He went to the front door, and after they collapsed the front door, people were still trying to get in. And as I look over, I see him tossing David Schwimmer up over the crowd barricades to get him back out of the event. And it's like, no. I had an Irish kid who was just there working for the summer, working for me as a PA. He came back in. I let him, like, right as the event first started and before the chaos had kicked in. He was just this he was the good-looking guy, good-looking Irish kid with an accent. And his name was Tommy O'Sullivan. And he's like, oh, I can go out and look at all the things. And it's like his Irish accent is just hysterical. And it's like, yeah, dude, go, check it out. You just make sure you're working as you go and check it out. And he comes back. He's, you're never going to believe this. I was sitting on the bed down there, and this woman comes up next to me, Cheryl Crow. And she's asking me if I want to sit and talk. And there's Cheryl Crow. So, yeah, those little nuances, those things you remember.
Yep.
That kid had the same experience that I did, that moment of, holy moly, this is, this actually is part of life.
Yep.
This whole Hollywood scene. But yeah, plenty of stress involved in all of the events. Yeah, we'll get there but when I was in the New York days, which several years to follow, remind me to tell you about the New York Jets event.
Really?
Yeah, another stressful one.
Holy! So you were flying. How was flying in and out of Sioux Falls? It was all right.
Oh, it was great. You get to know all the TSA by first name. Again, another funny story to come. And you make your connections. Yeah, it just becomes part of your commute to work at that point.
And so, would you be here for a while and then leave, or just like a few days, or like a week or two, and then an event?
There were like events that were 30 days, because you go out and it's difficult to jump in to an event halfway through. And I always describe the events. It's, there's so many working parts to it. There's so many moving parts. There's so many connections. It's like a spider web, and when a spider web is whole, it's super strong and, very effective. But as soon as you start plucking the little tiny threads out of there, pulling different pieces, it, loses strength. It loses continuity. It becomes difficult. So it's always been my prerogative at that point to be involved from the very beginning stages, at least somewhat, because knowing all those moving parts, as you move along, what pieces are integral, what pieces you can, lay back on, and it affects your decision making as you go through, because in every single event that you do develops its own personality from the get-go. Some are nice and sweet and cute and kind, and some are the problem child that just make you want to tear your hair out and throw your hands up and say, I'm done.
So you said you did. It's funny, we talked earlier, and when we talked before, and you said you did Hunter S. Thompson and getting shot out of the cannon.
Yes, there are, you talk about moments, and you don't always realize when the moment is happening.
Yep.
And I'm going to go back to when I first moved to Los Angeles. Originally lived on Santa Monica Boulevard near the ocean, which is in Santa Monica, but then moved to Venice Beach. And I think it was within 3 or 4 months of moving there that moved into the corner of Lincoln and Venice Beach. And great place, not the safest in the world, but lots of culture.
Yeah.
One night I couldn't sleep, and was like 10:30 at night, and called a buddy on the phone just to, have a late night chat. And he's like, why don't you come on up? He lived on the corner of Fairfax and Sunset right in Hollywood. He He's like, well, come on up. Traffic's light right now. You'll be here in 10 minutes, and we can go for a walk. And it was like, ooh, that sounds good, but trying to explain to your girl that you're going out at 10:30 at night to just go hang out with a buddy is not an easy task. And for some reason, I fought the fight that night. And I was like, look, I can't sleep. I'm going to go take a walk with David. And, when you're talking about artistic things and acting and, where a lot of it takes place. So I get to David's that night and it's like, all right, let's go take a walk. And we just start walking down Sunset Boulevard. And we get close to a place called the Viper Room. Yeah, everybody knows the Viper Room. That's where River Phoenix, he died of an overdose right outside. And Johnny Depp owned it from way back with a guy named Sal Jenka. Anyways, we're walking down Sunset, and I'm fresh to Hollywood. I still, again, have hayseed in my hair.
Yep.
And as we come to the front, I'm really interested in the Viper Room because I hadn't seen it before. And I look down around the corner, and we get right in front of it. And parked on the sidewalk in front of it on Sunset Boulevard is this beat-up old Winnebago. I mean, like, it looks like the Christmas Vacation Winnebago, and it's parked outside. Like, who's performing at the Viper Room? Because you'd think they'd have a better, coach outside. And there's kind of a small crowd, so we're making our way to get through the crowd. And I look in this Winnebago, and there sits John Cusack with a blow-up doll. Those kind of old, they're the sex blow-up dolls, but they've got one arm up, one arm down with a mouth. And it was, that gets your attention.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just saw John Cusack with a blow-up doll in a crappy Winnebago outside the Viper Room. And my friend David is like, yep, welcome to Hollywood, And we keep walking. We walk down to Virgin Records and turn around and go back. And, at that point, we had solved all the world's problems. Go home, go to sleep, don't think anything of it. Now we're going to flash forward a few years. Through the best events, we were doing a lot of stuff with Johnny Depp. Everything from, we remodeled the Viper Room for him, did some design work in his home, and at that point I had done the Sleepy Hollow premiere and the premiere for the movie Blow. So quite a bit of work with Johnny Depp. It just became indoctrinated in that camp. So I moved back to South Dakota, and one of the guys that I had done a lot of work with, and he'd also done a lot of work with Johnny Depp, calls me up one day and says, what do you know about Hunter Thompson? And it, strangely enough, through all that work with the Viper Room, ended up with, like, when we loaded all the old stuff out, ended up with a desk that belonged to the co-owner, Sal Jenka. And there was actually, at that time, they were talking about opening up a Viper Room Paris and a Viper Room Vegas, and I was on the docket back then to potentially go manage the one in Vegas. But Sal and Johnny had a falling out, but I had noticed some Hunter S. Thompson stuff, writings from Rolling Stone, interviews that he had done. And most importantly, I discovered the letters that he and Ralph Steadman used to write back and forth that they sometimes would publish, and they're just hysterical. So I learned who Hunter S. Thompson was and loved his writing style. And so when I get this phone call, that year, Hunter killed himself. He shot himself in the head at his home, which he called the Heavily Fortified Compound, which was a ranch up outside of Aspen, Colorado. So it was one of those things like, he'd been at some events in Hollywood, never got to really meet him, but just had my interest. And my friend John's like, what do you know about Hunter S. Thompson? I said, oh, well, and I rattled off all these facts, and I was like, and he just killed himself. And he said, well, in a 1978 interview, Hunter said, when I die, I want my ashes shot out of a cannon over my land in Aspen. And Johnny Depp, he's good friends with him and had become good friends with him because of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. When he was studying for the part of Hunter, he went and stayed with him at the Owl Farm, and this lifelong friendship ensued. So apparently they had all sorts of fun, which Johnny will let details of go every now and again.
Yeah.
But things like middle of the night, taking out a 357 and shooting at a full propane tank in the middle of the yard kind of thing. So I tell John, here's what I know about Hunter Thompson. He's like, great, because we're going to do this memorial for Johnny, and he wants to build this monument, and you're on the team. It was like, okay, great. And it was a year long of, traveling prep, and I mean, we had to do everything right to dealing with the FAA, because we're launching fireworks up, and it was in the runway approach for Aspen Airport in this area. I'm distracted now by all the different details and facts. But I go up and we start studying this, or start doing our research for how we want to present the event and how we're going to, what things Hunter enjoyed, who was going to be there, everything that goes into it. And it was a year-long process, and my buddy John was communicating directly with the Johnny Depp's camp and also with the family, because this is also a memorial. It's a funeral,
Yep.
if you will. So there's a fine line between memorial service and funeral, and then party. So we're dealing with all these facts, and I, of course, doing the research on Hunter, I had to read his books, and which made me even a bigger fan. All of these things come together, and John sends me some tapes and some video of Hunter to research this stuff. And as I'm researching, Hunter was doing a reading of some of his work in this snip of the film, and he's sitting on a stage, and flashes to this interview that they've edited for us. And as he's sitting there doing this reading on stage, in comes next to him John Cusack with a blow-up doll. And sits down next to him on stage. And then some of the video after that is they go outside and sit in a Winnebago, and then they jump into a convertible and drive off with this blow-up doll. It was years earlier that I was standing right outside that door.
Yep.
So the ironies and those moments that come full circle. Yeah. So the Hunter Thompson, it was an incredible event. It was a year in the planning. We built a 165-foot monument out of a tower crane structure, and the basis of it was a double-thumbed fist with this knife scabbard as the wrist and the peyote button in the middle as the very top of this monument, and it lit up at night. It just so happened that it was 5 foot taller than the Statue of Liberty by the time we were done with it, but that was our claim to fame. The night before the event was incredible. We had a jam session in our production house. We rented the house right across the road, or the ranch right across the road is kind of our production facility, so we didn't bother Anita Thompson at the Owl Farm. And that night we had a jam session with all the people involved. His neighbor, who's Jimmy Ibbotson, the lead singer for the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, John Oates down the road, who actually had a whole lot of dealings with him along the way. Most of them were funny. Ed Bradley, Bill Murray, George McGovern, who was a friend of my grandfather's back in the day in South Dakota politics, so it was kind of cool. Annie Leibovitz, just this list of all of Hunter's friends and companions and people throughout the years showed up for this thing. And one of the cool things is the day of the event, as everybody was working it was in his backyard, essentially, which is this huge pasture that goes up to cliffs and hills. As we're all working, a mountain lion, which was one of Hunter's favorite animals, apparently, comes walking right through the frickin' middle of all of us. And, of course, everybody just kind of stops and freezes like, whoa, there's a lion. And just kind of looks around and walks the rest of the way up into the mountains like a very spiritual moment of that happening. And there were just all these weird ironies that happened, on the build up to the event. And then the night of the event, we played Spirit in the Sky, which two minutes and 34 seconds is right when we launched into the song. But there was this huge drape over the monument that kind of, as Spirit in the Sky played, it sucked inside the monument and then hit the button to kaboom, kaboom, kaboom. His ashes went into 34 pyrotechnic canisters. Lots of ashes. And we had them designed. It was in a place in Ohio called like the Pirelli Brothers or something. And Anita had to take his ashes there, give them to the pyrotechnics company, and then they had to be driven from Ohio back to Colorado in an armored vehicle because they're explosives.
Oh, yeah.
This is post 9/11. And we had designed to detonate at 500 feet, which, is not that high up. So, and we had this, it was to happen at night. So we had these massive spotlights at the base of the monument, which when we kicked them on, it made a perfect silhouette like bat symbol in 4 different directions in the sky on the clouds. And we hadn't anticipated that. We hadn't anticipated low cloud cover for the day. And then we launched the ashes up, and at 500 feet, that's not as high as you think it is. So we're all standing there going, ooh, cool. All of a sudden, the ashes come raining back down on us. And we're all standing there like this dead guy's ashes. It's Hunter's ashes. Who cares, In his own words, it never got weird enough for me. So that was one of the events that I did early on when I moved back to South Dakota. So I was back and forth from here to Aspen on a regular basis. And I strangely enough, I was doing Super Bowl every year that year, kind of leading up to 06, 07. I started doing a tour for a place called Tamarack, Idaho, which Andre Agassi backed. He was the face of it. And then there was a guy by the name of Jean-Pierre Bootsplug, who was a bigwig in like European 3Com, and Mexican billionaire by the name of Alfredo Miguel. It was kind of, they got together and took this town in Idaho and turned it into a ski mountain, like a Four Seasons resort kind of. That's how they were billing it. And they were building condos and selling them. And so every week I was off to a different location. So I'd be back for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That next Monday I'd be off to Mexico City or San Francisco or New York. But it was one right after the other. And that year I also did Super Bowl in Miami, which was, it was the second Super Bowl that was down there. No, that would have been the first one after 2000. Mm-hmm. I was thinking I got it mixed up with the VH1 Awards, which we were doing events in Miami, and that's when Katrina hit. So it came across, South Florida once, actually kind of twice. It made a loop over the land and then went back out and then circled back up around. So we had to tear down tents and everything for the Katrina as it passed, and then put them back up and then do the VH1s. But that was in that same time frame. So I was doing Super Bowl, so it must have been 07. I was down there, and strangely enough, I had heard about there was a guy from South Dakota that I kind of turned into my protege. His name's Justin Beckman. He had a tent company here, and they had done a newspaper article on me for the Argus Leader back then about, Hollywood guy living at Lake Madison. He's flying out and flying back in to live. That was about the time that T. Denny made the big, huge donation, the first one to Sanford. And I had heard about it and just rung a bell. Like, for some reason, this is significant to me. And while I was doing that set of tours, because of the newspaper article, I got a call from Sanford saying, hey, we're thinking about doing an event here in Sioux Falls to celebrate this, and we're going to make this announcement with this donation. This is what we're going to focus on. And at the time, it was type 2 diabetes, a cure for it. So I went and almost, I kind of did a presentation for the board of Sanford, like, here's my vision of if you do this, what would you do? And I had met the board of Sanford because Kelby Krabanoff back in the time he was trying to attract the Vikings to Sioux Falls for the training.
That's the fall training camp, the early camp. They were trying to get to come to Sioux Falls. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got tapped by a friend who said, "Well, this is your world, how would you attract them?" So I did a presentation, and it just happened that the Sanford board was there, watching it. So I already presented to him once and got to meet him, not closely or anything, but then I am put in front of them again for the Sanford thing, and gave them my presentation of of what I thought it would look like, what would be fitting of the moment. And they're like, okay, well, let's do it. What's it going to cost? And I threw a number out, and it surprised me because they didn't blink an eye. And at that time, it started off as they thought there would be attendance of like 11,000 people potentially, and it was a good 18 months in the planning and execution of it. And it grew from essentially 11,000 people to 48, I think was our final count in the stadium that day. So I became Sioux Falls focused for the most part for a good 18 months. I did fly out to do a couple of Samsung tours that were multi-city tours, and they almost mirrored like we did for Tamarack. So it was a little easier the second time around. But yeah, the event for Sanford, as far as I know, is still the largest event ever private event to ever occur in South Dakota.
Well, it's funny because I remember that stuff, but it's a glance because at that time I'm in the Black Hills, so I'm not really worried about Sioux Falls stuff. Yeah. If Sioux Falls was Rapid City, I might have been more interested in coming, but you watch it on the news.
Yeah.
And I remember them trying to get the Vikings to have training camp here. And I remember that stuff, but it's interesting to know the person that put on the show.
Well, I mean, it was a big team. We had lots of people working on it. So by saying the person that put on the show is doing disjustice to them and their parts in it. But in that particular spider web, yeah, I was the spider in the middle.
Well, I mean, somebody has to start with the ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not there. That's with everything. Like there's a leader, and there's ones that have to, like you said, the spider has to create the web.
Mm-hmm.
But everything in that instance, everybody has a part in it, but there has to start with an idea.
Yeah. And when it first started, it was just supposed to be the family picnic. But over the course of those 18 months, we decided to combine essentially multi-use on all of the assets that we had to incorporate them into a gala. And then there was also a leadership summit. So it was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday thing, and there were a lot of challenges with that particular one because we ordered the largest stage in the world at the time to use. We had booked, it was a lucky shot, but with our talent, we, threw all sorts of names out there. And what we ended up on was AJ and Allie, which was a Disney act for the kids. So they'd have something during the day. And then opening was Sheryl Crow. And then the headliner act was Rast.
How about we talk about the New York Jets? And actually, yeah, let's talk about the New York Jets.
We can flash forward from where we kind of left off from the Sanford thing, because it actually ties in together. So did this whole Sanford thing, and consequently, my son's mother and I just wasn't working out. So we parted ways, and strangely enough, that year I got nailed in an investment scheme, huge Ponzi scheme, and it was a bunch of guys locally, but it hit me fairly hard. And that was the year, the housing just collapsed.
Yeah.
So along with housing, the first dollar to go in the entertainment world is the marketing dollar when times get tough.
Yep.
So the industry slowed down, and I'm living in South Dakota, and I'm at this point become single, and I start talking with an old colleague who I've worked with many times doing events as a client. And the trend at the time and the very beginning is incorporating the production side of things um, into the event planning from the very beginning, because that way, you just get a much more thorough, a more encompassing marketing technique, dollar focus, So decided that I would begin the production arm of an existing company, and the company is called Miami Marketing Group. And Miami Marketing Group, they started their big kind of breakthrough is they started marketing Live nightclub at the Fountain Blue, and Live at that time it was the hottest nightclub in the world, and it used to go back and forth with a club in Ibiza, Spain, as the number one. And at about the time it should have been dying down, it didn't, and just kept going, and has remained, up there. Now there's the Fountain Blue Miami, and they've got to Live there, and there was Live they put in the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, and they developed this great brand and constantly expanding. Well, took that name, and I started the production division for Miami Marketing Group, and I was operating out of South Dakota. So I was flying in and out for events. I think early on in those days, big stuff that I did was like Alonzo Mourning. He does a summer-long charity thing for kids in South Florida. Magic Johnson, I did an 8-ball tournament for him. There was a presentation for, we actually didn't get it, but to handle the Big Ten's marketing at the time. So got more and more involved, and
Yeah, and I don't know what that is.
it's trying to black me out.
Oh, there we go. I don't know.
Was that a fly?
It was a fly.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, of course.
You were Alonzo Mourning.
Yep. Just some of the events that I was doing with them and for them.
Yep.
A lot of travel to Los Angeles and several trips to New York doing events. Well, the owner of the company and partner at the time said, well, if we're going to get into this, you're going to need to move to New York. And it was like, New York, no. I'm terrified of New York. So over the course of a couple of months, moved to New York, got a place in Chelsea. Closest cross streets were like 16th and 7th, so right in the heart of Chelsea. And I didn't know that much about New York culture at the time, but I was based out of New York, and we're doing events. We did the NFL draft there, and we'll get back to the Jets thing in just a second. But I lived in Manhattan for about 9 months, and I went down to Miami on a program that we were doing Absolute vodka. They were doing boutique brands. So there was like an Absolute Miami, Absolute San Francisco, Absolute LA, and they were all different flavors. So we were doing all of these separate events, but the main one was in Miami, where I had to take a shipping container and convert it into a mobile lounge bar unit as the focal point of this event, and worked with an artist named Mr. Brainwash on the design of it. And it was all for Art Basel, the festival that goes on for a week down there. So I went to Miami and had to live in South Beach for about 60 days as we were prepping for this event. And it was while I was in Miami looking around like, I can be based out of here and not be based out of New York, although New York was fun for 9 months. I never even went back and cleaned out my apartment. But I was flying back and forth from Miami to New York on just a at least weekly basis. And we had one gentleman who worked with one of my favorite guys. His name was Nick. And Nick, unfortunately, he was in the midst of doing an event, and unfortunately his girlfriend passed away. He was in the middle of doing Super Bowl events. That was a year that the Super Bowl was in New Jersey. And all of the events were, of course, in Manhattan. So one of the events was an event called the 50-yard line, but it was a food-based event, and it was right next to the New York Jets event that they were doing. And since I had to step into this event halfway through, again, like I talked about, the early pieces of planning an event are crucial to sometimes the end pieces in an event. So I stepped in halfway through, and the event was it was right across from Madison Square Garden, which is, right over Penn Station. So pretty focal point. And it involved taking these 3 restaurants and tenting them all together in one structure and building the events out there. Well, as we're coming up on time, I am working with the city, and New York they are tough on their events. And at this point, I'm instructed that I need to get these tents up, and in order to get the permits for the tent, you have to go through the city, give them your planning, and they're like, all right, well, so you have to bring a crane in. All right, we need engineering on the subway system. We need like for these big events or these big tents that they're bringing in, like the tent company should have known this. So it was just cursed from the get-go. And meanwhile, the first of 3 blizzards rolls in as we're just getting started, and the temperature drops. And we have to, in order to save this event, we have to convert from putting it up with crane to putting it up by hand with a team of, lots of guys. Well, then you have to heat it. So the tent company orders all these heaters, brings them in, and they're dropping off huge propane tanks to fire these heaters. I'm like, how did you get that propane into the city? They're like, we drove it over under the tunnel. I was like, first of all, get it all out of here, because it's not allowed in New York. Propane heat, we need electric heaters, and then we're going to need generators, and all this stuff had been planned before I even, got a hold of the event, before the budget was even finalized. So I have to step into this fiasco already going on, and all of the weather thrown in on top of it, 3 blizzards, one after the other. And I kid you not, like at the end of the week, Super Bowl's over, and we go to load out, and it was like, okay, thank God, finally things are gonna, I hadn't slept, I don't think, in 3 weeks leading up to it. It was constantly cold. It was below zero. Like we're going out on site, and there's teams of guys dressed. Most of these guys came from LA, so they're Hispanic teams that are not used to the cold. And you have to, like, when you put, it's tough to work with aluminum in the cold, because the aluminum is such a conductor that, like, it will suck the heat right out of your body as you're handling it. So we have to, share with these warm weather guys, and not only keep them going, but just keep them bundled up. So we're ordering, boxes of cold weather gear to get to them. And the very last day, after everything's over and it's time to load out, we're, exhausted. And sure enough, I watched this first snowflake float down. I was like, mother. and thus started another blizzard to load out into. Working in Manhattan with trucks and heavy equipment and all that is no easy task. Meanwhile, also, as we're doing the event, the Jets event, which is right across from Madison Square Garden, they had a band playing there, just a little local band.
Yeah.
No, nothing of consequence. Well, sure enough, somebody from Penn Station working, union guy, sees across the street loading in some staging gear. Well, then the union shows up. And I don't know if you know anything about the unions in New York, but they own the place.
Huh.
They show up and they're like, hey, why don't you have union guys working on this job? Well, because it's not a union venue. Yes, it is, because Penn Station can see you from here. And if you don't use union guys, they have a guy in the rubber rat costume show up and start picketing your event, which just is negative press. So we ended up having to bring on a whole bunch of union stuff and union gear, which pumps the price way up. And of course, the Jets acquiesce because they, union venues rather than fight it. And who wants negative press?
Mm.
And just for instance, I can bring a guy in off the street, hire him, work him for $25 an hour, just doing general labor.
Yeah.
Not in New York, you can't do $25 an hour, but you bring in a union guy on a job like that, it starts at $100 an hour for unskilled labor, and then you got to bring in the union electricians and the union stagehands, and they adhere to all those union things of 15-minute breaks, and when you're under the gun, and it just ends up, for a non-union venue, which is why we chose it, ended up being a union event, which, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to speak badly about unions, but it affects it greatly, and it doubles the price, and it doubles the issue. You got an electrician coming in at $500 an hour whose job is to plug in a lamp. So, yes, another one that Super Bowl almost killed me. I was frozen for a month afterward.
I bet.
But I went back to Miami.
There you go.
So, and that's how I ended up in Miami. It was just I didn't want to go back to New York, and through a series of coincidences, my mate ended up there and got a job. Had in that whole time frame in between met another girl, and she ended up, and it was just kind of like, all right, let's stay in Miami. And through that was the period of time frame when I started doing way more national stuff, getting more heavily involved in Super Bowls, because we were very sports oriented. Used to do for Mercedes-Benz, I would do Augusta every year. They rent out a whole neighborhood, and they bring in top clients, top producers, all that, and you stay there and go see the masters during the day, and then at night we'd have dinners and entertainment and that kind of thing. It was in a great setting. It was, and they have a lot of pull. It was along a river there, and I can't remember the name of it, but like the river would get too low, and you'd just pick up the phone and call the local city guy and like, hey, the river's too low, and all of a sudden the river would come up. They're very event, very pro event in Augusta, because once a year it brings in their mainstay for the year if they need it.
Well, that is, and that's. It's just amazing what the events you've done. Where I'm going with this, because I know you got to get to Nebraska, but where I'm going with this is, can we do a part 2?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get out of the here now, but I'm just saying, I have more questions, and this could be another 2-hour conversation.
Well, I actually had it said when I first moved back to South Dakota, and I love to share my stories,
Yeah.
And once you start talking about them, people want to know more and more and more. And it got to the point where at one time I had somebody say, like, you're always talking about yourself. And it made me really self-conscious about sharing those stories. Because for me, it's the whole thing you're talking about, those moments. It's sharing my joy and the fun that I've had. And I know I've gotten to be in some of these just ridiculous situations, whether it's like the 10-year anniversary for 9/11. I was with Rudolph Giuliani and General Tommy Franks at Cantor Fitzgerald. And at the time I was hosting Michael J. Fox and Bill Withers and Kim Kardashian through the trading floor, and all the money that, they made, they donated to the families. But I mean, covering all those things, those stories, little things like that, sharing the joy and the poignancy and the sharing that is where I derive joy. Well, sharing it with others. So I feel guilty, like I'm talking too much about myself.
Actually, you aren't, because I think it's entertaining, and I also think it's educational, and I think people have questions, and you've got to live some of the things that or talk to people that people wonder what they're like or who they are. You're not to me, this is why we have podcasts. People can either listen or not. They can, like, I've done a few of on my own, and I thought, this is just me talking, and but people like to hear stories. People like to know what things are going on. And I like I said, I have probably 2 more hours of questions and stories to hear here. And I'm not trying to hold up your whole day. I've been here 2.5 hours already, just about. So,
well, we certainly, as I can talk, obviously.
I know you can.
So anytime you want to hit round 2, let's do it.
Well, but before I finish this, because we are going to do a round 2, because here's the deal. It's like social media,
Mm-hmm.
It's my page, so I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a round 2 anyway, even if nobody ever wanted to listen to that. But before, and I know, because here's the deal. I'd like to have like a second half. We'll start. I know we went 2010 to now, because now you have 2 wonderful kids, young kids. I'm saying, and you're going to Nebraska to see your older son, son, and just how life has changed. That would be fun to listen to too. And I think that the reason I'm saying that is that's another 2-hour conversation, I would assume.
As you drove into the neighborhood this morning and looked around,
yes, I'd like to know how life changed.
Oh yeah,
and I'd like to go into that a little deeper.
I think a lot of my neighbors would also like this story too.
Yeah,
they look at me like, "What does this guy do?"
Yeah. So, but when we get done with the conversation, and like I said, we're going to have number 2, and I'm going to come out here because I think we have better conversations like this.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at me on a screen.
Oh yeah, in the person.
I mean, there's things I can't do. I can't be everywhere at once, so we have to do some on the screen. But this conversation is way better in person. When I get to the end of the conversations, I ask one question, and that's, what's the good life to Thomas?
That's a very time-pointed question at this point. The good life is where I'm at right now. I get to spend a lot of time with my 2 youngest kids.
Mm-hmm.
They're awesome. They're good kids. They're hysterical. They keep me on my toes, and the wonderful thing about kids is they keep you grounded no matter what. And this is a story. I noticed this. It was told to me years ago, and the guy's name is Mike Richter, and he's the stage manager, or was the stage manager for REO Speedwagon, and he's been with them for years and years and years. He's talking about how his kids just think he's the biggest dork there is. And he's like, "What do you mean I'm a dork? I literally fly around on private jets with rock stars and party with rock stars all the time. And then I come home to my kids and they're like, yeah, Dad, whatever." So no matter what, the kids always keep you grounded. They always, it brings your attention to where it should be. And if there's one thing I want to teach to my children so that they have very fulfilling life or have very fulfilling lives is don't die rusty.
That's exactly where, and that's why I created Don't Die Rusty. It's wear out, don't rust out.
Yeah, exactly.
And you just keep moving forward every day. And it's kind of like I think I posted it today. I said, go chase your dreams because nobody can chase them for you.
Mm-hmm.
So do what you need to do and live your best life. Be the best you. So, well, I appreciate this. I really do. Maybe I'll get somebody else on here with us and we can have some more stories here.
Well, you definitely will get the counterbalance there.
Those are always fun conversations, though, because I've had some people that I bring the other half on, and you hear stories that you don't hear, and they're a grounding story.
That is, it would be great if I could have 3 or 4 guys sitting next to me, because it's like when you get together with old high school friends, and just all the things you forgot about.
Yep.
Only take that into career and every other aspect.
Yep.
There are so many stories that I forget, and
Yep.
with the old high school gang, well, and a lot of the work friends, it is amazing how much better those stories get over time.
Yeah, I believe that.
I don't remember it that way, but if that's the way you want to tell it, okay. It seems to be getting better and better every time I hear it.
Well, and I'm very appreciative of Kurt getting me in touch with you, and I'm very appreciative that you have done this with me. And I hope that we can do it again for sure. To do the second half for sure.
Yeah, name the time and place, and yeah, many thanks to Kurt for introducing us, and I cannot wait to watch his trek around the world.
No, I can't either.
We've had many conversations about what I know about marketing and the way that he is presenting his story, and hopefully I've been of some help, because my opinion and $5.25 will get you a ride on a subway.
That's right. But no, we'll do this again. I'm just, like I said, I know time and space in here. So anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate this.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I will look forward to the next session.
Yes, we will. And so don't die rusty, nation. Keep chasing your dreams, being the best you, and don't die rusty.
Awesome.